This series of videos will help individuals and organizations develop or enhance their active offer of services in French. Political decision makers reinforce favorable conditions for the active offer of justice services in both official languages. The following video is primarily addressed to managers working in the Saskatchewan justice system, especially supervisors and staff at the Saskatchewan Ministry of Justice. Thank you for watching.
Systemic leadership involves having a systemic perspective on justice in the whole province. That means looking at the system itself, looking at the users of the system, the citizens, but it also means looking at conditions throughout the province and dealing with those. Systemic leaders are called upon to create conditions that will be favorable to the active offer of French language services in the province. Also, systemic leaders are called upon to be accessible role models. What they say and what they do is very important because they show the way, if you like, or they inspire people who are working in the system and the general public and the francophone citizens in regards to French language services.
And what concrete measures can managers take to implement an active offer of French language services?
These are many things that systemic leaders can do, maybe too many, but it's important in the first steps to raise awareness of the active offer of French language services and its effect on the province. People need to be more aware of the foundation for an active offer, of the fundamentals of what is an active offer, of how they can exercise their leadership in offering actively French language services throughout the system. And also, the people become aware that this requires a general collaborative approach. Not only does the system need to be made aware, but also the general public needs to be aware of what active offer of French language services means and what the effects are expected. Secondly, it would be a good idea to share the reference framework on active offer of French language services. That framework has been developed. It's available. It should be distributed to people within the system, but not only just sent out there like any other document or report. There needs to be dialogue that is built. There needs to be problem solving that would be built around discussions on the reference framework. And finally, I think it would be important for the systemic leaders to conduct a situational analysis on the active offer of French language services across the system so that they can identify problems, gaps, but also identify what is already being done and is satisfactory. This analysis will allow for the preparation of an action plan to facilitate active offer of French language services in Saskatchewan's justice system. The change that needs to happen won't happen by itself. It really needs to be prompted and supported by the systemic leaders. For example, by adopting a policy on designated bilingual positions, or at least review the existing policy on bilingual positions. The policy needs to be followed by a strategy for recruitment of bilingual staff. It's not always easy to obtain the services of bilingual staff. Then staff have to be allocated in a way that facilitates active offer. There also needs to be both a policy and a strategy for staff training. There are things that staff will need to do that they are not used to doing. How do we prepare them? What kinds of tools do they need? How do we provide those tools? And while all of this is being done, the systemic leaders need to have some method for monitoring progress to see how things are progressing and what needs to be changed so that the evolution will continue in a very positive way.
And what about the Francophone community, André? How do you engage?
I think the system and the systemic leaders, both in the community and in the system, need to work together. They can do that here in Saskatchewan by rallying around, for example, the branch for Francophone affairs, rallying around the spokespeople for the community and their organizations, their institutions. They can certainly rally around the French Language Jurists Association and the Centre Info Justice, which is now working very effectively. Those partnerships are what will be needed in order to not only implement the action plan, but resolve any issues and problems that arise from the action plan.
Who is ultimately responsible for the active offer of French language services in the field of justice?
It has to be a collaborative and a shared responsibility. The government can't do this alone. The justice system needs to exercise its leadership. The legal professionals, the professionals working within the system, and the related services such as police or parole officers or those types of services all need to be involved and participate very actively in setting up active offer of French language services. Then finally, the community. If the community is not there, if people are not requesting the services, if they're not using the services, then all this will be useless. So it really needs to be a very large collaborative effort.
And what role does each group of actors play?
At the systemic level, I think creating favorable conditions and taking the actions that we've just talked about. Then once these favorable conditions are in place, once the framework has been set up, then the organizations and pieces of the organizations can put structures and processes and tools in place for this work to happen. The professionals need to keep building their capacity to support the active offer of French language services and to participate in that active offer and to create within their own workplace the kind of climate that will ensure that both French language and English-speaking clients will feel comfortable in using their services. Finally, the community has a lot of work to do to make sure that people are aware of what services they can access, and that they use these services so that all of this effort is worthwhile.
And how can ethical and collaborative leadership be exercised across the system?
By partnerships, by agreements between multiple partners. And there are community groups, there are professional groups. We only need to mention the Law Society of Saskatchewan, many other groups, both working in the French language and working in the English language, really need to cooperate to make this a reality.
And André, what results will be achieved if we do implement an active offer of French language services?
Well, some very important results. When the active offer of French language services is in place and it's working and the community has confidence in those services, then it increases confidence in the justice system. It increases access to justice for this population. It provides better quality services because language is part of quality of service. And it enhances and promotes linguistic duality in Canada, which is certainly an identity characteristic of Canada.
So in a nutshell, André, active offer is?
In a nutshell, it's a question of legitimacy, respect, equity, and equality, and it's a question of ethics. But it's also a collective and a systemic issue. It's not related to just one department, one region, one player. And it's a question of systemic, organizational, professional, and community leadership. Each one has to exercise his or her leadership in his or her area of responsibility.
The Centre Info Justice can help you by providing information, resources, and facilitation services throughout the implementation process. Make sure to view these other videos in our series. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please contact the AJEFS Centre Info Justice. Thanks again for watching.